Justin A.W. Blair here with another YouTube video coming at you. I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I am an occasional man of the net, surfing the waves of the internet, the information superhighway, to bring you a review of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Trial by Error, number 21 by Mark Garland. There are more errors than not in this book. The good and the bad. The good is it feels right at first. The author really gets the small characterizations of our main cast, gets it down. This is towards the latter part of the numbered series, number 21. The show is out by now. They had some time to understand how the characters were going to be on screen. Does a really excellent job of that with Quark. Describes how he speaks, how he moves, and Sisko's general attitude. It's very good. Characterization is on point. I also like the stakes being relatively low. There is a problem. However, the problem, which is, I would say, the A plot, or part of the A plot, which is the disappearance of Jake Sisko with his girlfriend on a runabout, is, we know it's low stakes because we know Jake Sisko is going to make it through because he's a main character and he's not going to get killed off. Now, that means there's no tension in that plot. As we've talked about before, there can be no real tension in a plot point that involves the risk of demise for a main character because we know the main character is going to live. Let me lay this out for you. The A plot and the B plot, by the way. So the A plot is, there is essentially mystery ships. First looks like a Klingon ship, and it's the mirror image of a particular ship. These mystery ships are appearing, and once fired upon, they are mirroring the action of the other ship and firing back. Now, here is the big problem with this. That's so obvious, basically, after the first time it happens, what is happening, that the reader's sitting there being like, yeah, it's obviously just mirroring your behavior. Stop shooting at it because it's going to shoot back at you. And no one really figures this out until, 75% through the book. And that's ridiculous. I mean, and that does cause a problem because it's very boring, because it's a mystery. But it's not a mystery that's interesting because it's obvious. Something is making these ships appear, mirror the actions of whatever other ship is there, and that's that. This plot also resolves poorly because it's not really ever explained. This mystery could be done well if the mystery was not, look, this is what's happening, but instead, why is this happening? What entity is doing this? Something like that. That doesn't really happen so much. We've discovered some planetoid or whatever that's shrouded in frogs. It's not shrouded in frogs. That would have been more interesting. It's shrouded in fog. And Jake Sisko and his girlfriend, by the way, crash land there. And then basically in a paragraph towards the very end of the book, Jake Sisko's like, hey, I think they're intergalactic beings that learn from mimicry. And everybody's just like, okay, yeah, sounds about right. And that's it. If we were led through trying to figure out ourselves through clues what is happening, or to that conclusion even, that could be good. But this is a problem with Star Trek, right? Because there's no way to involve the reader or viewer in such questions oftentimes, since outside of the core alien races and the core lore of Star Trek, everything's kind of up for grabs. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, this is also the problem with techno-babble, and something I've spoken about in other videos, where if we could understand enough of the science of the techno-babble, then we could be led through situations which need to be solved and will be solved by a technical solution. But we as the viewer or reader could actually be led through and have that satisfaction of guessing the solution before it happens. Since it is a made-up world of techne, we can't guess because it's made up. So that is a problem which I would like to actually come up with a name for. It's not just in Star Trek. It's a problem in science fiction in general, but that's something that if that can be done well, and it's a hard ask because you'd have to inform people of the rules of the secondary world in which you're writing beforehand. In fact, as I think about it, Star Trek or a large franchise is actually best placed to do something like that because they have years and years and decades to lead people into that. Whereas a standalone science fiction book can't really do that, deliver that much information. Something to consider. Bring it back for a second. I do like that. So we have that's the A plot. The B plot is there are some aliens. We've never met them before. They are on the station. They're mad at each other because they accuse each other of shooting each other's ships. They're both kind of scoundrels, probably, and they have kind of a makeshift peace conference there at the station while this other stuff is happening. That feels like an early episode of Deep Space Nine. It feels cozy. It feels good. Again, you got the characters. They're on point. Everything's good. It just doesn't quite come to fruition, though. It really just kind of comes down to Quark suggesting a trade agreement and then everybody thinking that's some sort of marvelous idea that will work. And I don't think they even really go in and explain that some of the reason these two aliens, which are the same species, I think, but like on different planets or something, I'm not sure, that they're mad at each other is because the mirror ships are in their quadrant and they think they're shooting it at each other, but they're shooting at the mirror ships, but that doesn't actually make sense. And the reason that doesn't make sense is because why would anyone shoot first at a ship that looks almost exactly like their own ship? That's kind of solved by the fact that they're the same alien civilization. Again, a lot of mistakes are made. The Klingons early on, make these mistakes with shooting at their own mirror images and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Look, it just stays flat. You got a couple things that could work. It works enough to keep you reading through, kind of, but there's not really any mystery there, and it all resolves itself pretty much as you would expect. There's no twists. There's no turns. There's not much. You would think, with Jake being lost, maybe we'd see a little bit more of that relationship between Sisko and Jake explored, and the fact that Sisko probably feels a little bit concerned about the fact that he's brought his son out into the frontier of Deep Space Nine, even though I think at this point he's basically an adult. You don't really see much of that. And then there's just a lot of boring dialogue about sensor readings, while all these people who are really smart are like trying to figure out that, yeah, it's just a mirror image of the thing that does what you do. Further, so then Jake just randomly comes with this theory that they are intergalactic. I don't even know why they need to be intergalactic. They could just be from somewhere else in the galaxy they haven't explored, but, an intergalactic civilization of kind of childlike geniuses that somehow also built starships to get out of their galaxy, but that only learn through mimicry. I don't know, Jake. I don't know about that, Science Officer Jake, but that's what's given to us. A lot of painfully boring dialogue between Jake and his Bajoran girlfriend, which I don't think we really ever meet again in the show. So that's just kind of that. I think it's kind of maybe trying to appeal to the adolescent youth, in the book. Like, hey, how a young man has a first girlfriend, all that kind of stuff. The pluses, the minuses. The pluses, characterization is good. It hops along okay, gets stuck a little bit in dialogue about sensor readings, but, the main thing is the characterization is good. That's about the main positive thing. And then I have given you and enumerated and listed and gone on and on about the negative things already, so I will cut this one short. Trial by error. Couple trials, several errors. It's whatever. It's a Deep Space Nine novel. And that is it. So we will see you next time for the next review. Please like, subscribe, do all the things. Tell me where I'm wrong if you want. Get down in those comments. Correct me. I do this without a lot of notes. some hastily scrawled notes, but I like to keep it live. I like to keep it moving. I don't like to read things from scripts. I don't really enjoy that. I just like this to be conversational. And that means I forget the names of episodes. I forget basic trivia. I forget some basic things. Feel free to correct me in the comments. That's it.